Chapter 10. Directions for the Government of the Body. Part 1. Directions about our labor and callings. Title 1. Directions for the right choice of our calling and ordinary labor. Title 2. Directions against idleness and sloth. Title 3. Directions against sloth and laziness in things spiritual and zeal and diligence. Part 2. Directions about sports and recreations and against excess and sin therein. Part 3. Directions about apparel and against the sin therein committed. Footnotes. Volume 2, Part 2, Christian Economics, Table of Contents. Chapter 1. Directions about marriage for choice and contract. Title 2. Cases of marriage. Footnotes. Chapter 2. Directions for the right choice of servants and masters. Part 1. Directions for the right choice of servants. Part 2. Directions for the right choice of masters. Chapter 3. A disputation or arguments to prove the necessity of family worship and holiness, or directions against the cavils of the profane and some sectaries who deny it to be a thing required by God. Whether the solemn worship of God in and by families as such be of divine appointment. Objections answered. Of the frequency and seasons for family worship. Chapter 4. General directions for the holy government of families. Chapter 5. Special motives to persuade men to the holy governing of their families. Chapter 6. More special motives for holy and careful education of children. Chapter 7. The mutual duties of husbands and wives toward each other. Chapter 8. The special duties of husbands to their wives. Chapter 9. The special duties of wives to husbands. Cases about divorce and separation. Chapter 10. The duties of parents for their children. Chapter 11. The special duties of children toward their parents. Chapter 12. The special duties of children and youth towards God. Chapter 13. The duties of servants to their masters. Chapter 14. The duties of masters toward their servants. Title 2. Directions for those masters in foreign plantations who have Negroes and other slaves, being a solution of several cases about them. Chapter 15. The duties of children and fellow servants to one another. Chapter 16. Directions for holy conference of fellow servants or others. Chapter 17. Directions for each particular member of the family how to spend every ordinary day of the week. Chapter 18. Directions for the order of holy duties. Title 1. Directions for the holy spending of the Lord's Day in families. Title 2. More particular directions for the order of holy duties. Chapter 19. Directions for profitable hearing the word preached. Title 1. Directions for the understanding the word which you hear. Title 2. Directions for remembering what you hear. Title 3. Directions for holy resolutions and affections in hearing. Title 4. Directions to bring what we hear into practice. Chapter 20. Directions for profitable reading the Holy Scriptures. Chapter 21. Directions for reading other books. Chapter 22. Directions for the right teaching of children and servants so as may be most likely to have success. Chapter 23. Directions for prayer. Directions for prayer in general. Brief explication of the method of the Lord's Prayer. Some questions about prayer answered. Special directions for family prayer. Special directions for secret prayer. Chapter 24. Brief directions for families about the sacrament of the body and blood of Christ. Chapter 25. Directions for fearful, troubled Christians that are perplexed with doubts of their sincerity and justification. Chapter 26. Directions for declining or backsliding Christians and about perseverance. Title 2. Directions for preventing backsliding or for perseverance. Chapter 27. Directions for the poor. Chapter 28. Directions for the rich. Chapter 29. Directions for the aged and the weak. Chapter 30. Directions for the sick. Directions for a safe death to secure our salvation. 1. Directions for an unconverted sinner in his sickness. 2. Directions to the sanctified for a safe departure. Title 2. Directions how to profit by our sickness. Title 3. Directions for a comfortable or peaceful death. Directions for resisting the temptations of sin in the time of sickness. Title 4. Directions for doing good to others in our sickness. Chapter 31. Directions to the friends of the sick that are about them. A. Form of exhortation to the ungodly in their sickness or those that we fear as such. A form of exhortation to the godly in their sickness. Volume 3, Part 3, Christian Ecclesiastics, Table of Contents. Reader, Chapter 1 of the worship of God in general. Chapter 2 directions about the manner of worship to avoid all corruptions and false unacceptable worshipping of God. Chapter 3 directions about the Christian covenant with God and baptism. Chapter 4 directions about the profession of our religion to others. Chapter 5 directions about vows and particular covenants with God. Title 1 directions for the right making such vows and covenants. Title 2 directions about against perjury and perfidiousness, land for keeping vows and oaths. Chapter 6 directions to the people concerning the internal and private duty to their pastors and the improvement of their ministerial office and gifts. Chapter 7 directions for the discovery of the truth among contenders and the escape of heresy and deceit. More near and particular directions against error. Chapter 8 directions for the union and communion of saints and the avoiding unpeaceableness and schism. Chapter 9 how to behave ourselves in the public assemblies and the worship there performed and after them. Chapter 10 directions about our communion with holy souls departed and now with Christ. Chapter 9 directions about our communion with the holy angels. Cases of conscience about matters ecclesiastical. Reader, question: how to know which is the true church among all pretenders, that a Christian's conscience may be quiet in his relation and communion? Question 2. Whether we must esteem the Church of Rome a true church, and in what sense some divines affirm it and some deny it. Question 3. Whether we must take the Romish clergy for true ministers of Christ, and whether their baptism and ordination be nullities. Question 4. Whether it be necessary to believe that the Pope is the Antichrist. Question 5. Whether we must hold that a papist may be saved. Question 6. Whether those that are in the Church of Rome are bound to separate from it, and whether it be lawful to go to the Mass or other worship. Question number 7. Whether the true calling of the minister by ordination or election, etc., be necessary to the essence of the Church. Question 8. Whether sincere faith and godliness be necessary to the being of the ministry, and whether it be lawful to hear a wicked man, or take the sacrament from him, or take him for a minister. Question 9. Whether the people are bound to receive or consent to an ungodly, intolerable, heretical pastor, yea, or one far less fit and worthy than a competitor, if the magistrate command it, or the bishop impose him. Question 10. What if the magistrate command the people to receive one pastor and the bishops or ordainers another? Which of them must be obeyed? Question 11. Whether uninterpreted succession either of right ordination or of conveyance by jurisdiction be necessary to the being of the ministry or of a true church? Question 12. Whether there be or ever was such a thing in the world as one Catholic Church constituted by any head besides or under Christ? Question 13. Whether there be such a thing as a visible Catholic Church, and what it is. Question 14. What is it that maketh a visible member of the universal Church, and who are to be accounted such? Question 15. Whether besides the profession of Christianity, either testimony or evidence of conversion or practical godliness be necessary to prove a man a member of the universal visible Church? Question 16. What is necessary to a man's reception into membership in a particular church over and above this foresaid title? Whether any other trials or covenant or what? Question 17. Wherein doth the ministerial office essentially consist? Question 18. Whether the people's choice or consent is necessary to the office of a minister in his first work, as he is to convert infidels and baptize them, and whether this be a work of office, and what call is necessary to it.